All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike. You have now arrived at my train of thought. It's time to focus on the pre-week 7 power rankings, but before I do that, I do the same thing I did with the NBA that I did with the NHL last week, where I put a team in each tier that kind of showed an example of what they were last season. So, without further ado, I'm going to start with the Detroit Pistons Zombie tier. Carolina, a better game. The Panthers did not look completely awful and overmatched for a lot of this game with Atlanta. They did get bullied by a really good offensive line and two bruising, bulldozing running backs in Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, but for a lot of this game, Carolina put up a fight. Leggett even scored a touchdown. Ultimately, they were just outclassed, and until Carolina gets their roster right, they will continue to be outclassed. They missed Derek Brown and Shaq Thompson in the worst way. Jacksonville, they tapped out. If you listen to one of their players, yeah, they did. And it's a shame because, yikes, that's really bad. Chicago did get whatever they wanted to, whenever they wanted to get it in the second and third quarters of this game. And in some cases, the fourth quarter, too. It was not looking good for the Jags at all in a place in London where they usually do well. Is it point of no return time for Doug Peterson on Sunday morning when they play in London once again? I'll talk about that in a little bit. Cleveland, game 3 tomorrow. Yeah, the Guardians have not played well against the Yankees at all in the first 2 games of this series. They have given up bombs to Judge, to Stanton, and to Soto. The latter 2 in game 1, Judge in game 2. Yankee fans are going absolutely berserk. It's been a good couple of games for the Yankees, and the Guardians have just looked overmatched so far. Oh, and the Browns are still terrible, not named Myles Garrett. That's also a thing. Amari Cooper was traded to the Bills. That also happened yesterday. And at least Cleveland is trying to get pieces back in terms of draft capital for their guys. Maybe that was just the start of it. Las Vegas, it begins. Speaking of trades, it was a trade for Davante Adams to the Jets, which a lot of people had predicted and seen coming. It finally went down. I did ask the question last week. Okay, if Vegas' season is pretty much cooked, is it everything must go not named Max Crosby? What happens here? Well, the second highest profile player on the team is now across the entire country and in New York. Or New Jersey, I guess. What happens to the rest of the Raiders? Do they just clean house and try to start anew? Where are we going from here, Vegas? Where are we going? Except for Golden Knights games, where I guess we're going there. New England, good first impression. Yes, they got rolled by the Texans. They were supposed to. They got mauled by a returning Joe Mixon. They were supposed to. But Drake May, so far, pretty good. He took some lumps because, yeah, the Patriots' offensive line is terrible. But he also threw some dimes, which looked really good. That first touchdown looked amazing. Well done on his part. But New England's clearly not ready. They're badly undercooked, and you need a whole lot of help in a whole lot of spots. Come back to the Patriots in 2 years. By then, I think they'll be ready to go. New York Jets. Somehow, not surprising. Yeah, in the span of 2.5, 3 weeks, they had a humiliating loss to Denver where it was ugly in terms of the weather. It was ugly in terms of the performance. Greg Zuerlein missed another clutch kick. When the Broncos served the game up on a tee for them, Aaron Rodgers got beaten to a bloody pulp. And started to realize, oh, wait, this is what being a New York Jet looks like. And then there's the Vikings game. Rodgers throws 3 in-os. One gets taken back to the crib. He looked disastrous. And ultimately, they take L's. They take another L there. And then fire Robert Saleh. It's not great. And then we close the deal out in disastrous fashion with a whole lot of penalties and a whole lot of miscommunication and another bad in-o with Rodgers and Mike Williams slipping and whatnot. And you hold this L to the Bills, and then you trade for Davante Adams when it looked like it was probably a week too late. Somehow none of this is shocking. Doesn't shock me because the New York Jets live, breathe, and swim in the world of chaos. It's what they do. Aaron Rodgers is finding this out firsthand. Tennessee, Grizzlies and Volunteers. look at the Memphis Grizzlies. Look at how they're rolling so far. Ja Morant looking good in preseason. He's healthy. Desmond Bane is healthy. Zach Edey looks like he's going to be a nasty force in the middle at the center spot. And Jaren Jackson sliding into the 4. Memphis looks like they could be good again in the West. I expect them to be back after a gap year. Meanwhile, Tennessee Volunteers, their biggest game in a couple of years at home since the last time they hosted Alabama. And what was an incredible game. And they ended up winning that game at the end with a field goal. That goalpost is probably still in a river somewhere. They are now going to host Alabama once again on Saturday, in which I think is the second best game of the week. Texas and Georgia being the first, but Tennessee-Alabama is a worthy number 2 game. Oh, and the Titans are still bad. Will Levis still creating memes. I guess that's the thing. Well, Tennessee starts selling off pieces, though. And by Tennessee, I mean the Titans. Other than Jeffrey Simmons and L'Jarius Sneed, who else is sellable on this team? That's the other part I want to know. In Arizona, growing pains. Yeah, though the Cardinals are going to win a couple of games this year where they're going to beat some teams. It's like, huh? Arizona won this game? They're going to also take beatings. And they fumbled a lot, and that's effectively what was the beginning of the end of this game when it came to the Packers. Jordan Love threw some dots, and he didn't make too many mistakes. Arizona obviously made a bunch. That was effectively the end. The Cardinals may or may not sell some pieces off at the deadline. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there. It's a shame that Marvin Harrison got hurt and concussed. We'll see if Harrison will be healthy. But Arizona is still, I think, going to be a pest for a lot of different teams. How much of a pest? We will see. Let's get to the Chicago Bulls monkey's paws here. New York Giants, O-line concerns. Now, we knew that going into the season that their offensive line wasn't very good. And Daniel Jones was going to take a beating. And this showed itself on Sunday Night Football. But now Andrew Thomas is out for the year. So the beating is probably going to be even worse. That is rather unfortunate. And I say this because this defensive line's really good. And that's before they lost Kevin Thibodeau, and they still kept up their really good play. Brian Burns was a menace on Sunday Night Football. Dexter Lawrence was too. Never mind the dance. But the Giants' D-line is going to keep them in a lot of games as long as they're able to get home and cause pressure for the quarterback. It's just a shame that Daniel Jones is also going to catch a beating because the offensive line is going to respond in kind. Miami, opportunity approaches. In a watered-down NFC, the Dolphins are still breathing after beating New England. They probably wouldn't be at 1-4. It would not be great. But they're still breathing at 2-3. And after a bye week, did they get healthy? We'll see. Miami steals the game against the Colts. And now you're talking 3-3 in a conference where 9 or 10 wins may get you in these playoffs. It may not get you the East, but it'll get you into the playoffs. And well, you need a shot if you're healthy upon making said playoffs. Miami has not been the last 2 years. Maybe this is their way in. Cincinnati, defense showed up. In a week where the offense did not dot people up. In a week where Joe Burrow was largely shut down. He had the one great run, and the Giants, long at 3rd and 18, is really bad. And then Chase Brown had the one good run at the end. A lot of the rest of it was really good defensive play by the Giants. And really bad offensive play by the Bengals and vice versa. Trey Hendrickson was a beast, though. We should expect that from him. And the Bengals defensive line caused a whole lot of drama for Daniel Jones. Sure, no Devin Singletary, no Malik Neighbors. You got to start somewhere, though, because the Bengals defense was really bad no matter who the ops were. New Orleans, season's in trouble. It honestly is. The Saints are in deep, deep trouble when you consider David Carr is hurt, and Olave got concussed, and Shaheed got hurt. It's not looking great for New Orleans, who started this season with a whole lot of promise. They haven't won since the beatdown in Dallas, and they've obviously got the 2 division losses to Tampa and Atlanta, and are in real trouble of losing this season real quick, because both the Bucs and Falcons are looking like real teams. Also, you have 3 turnovers forced on defense, and you still get 50-pieced. That's really bad, Saints. Really bad. LA Rams. Kupp may return. So Cooper Kupp is potentially practicing, and he could be back this week. The following week could be Puka Nakuma's turn to return. The Rams are kind of out of this at 1-4, but at least they'll have a fighting chance in a lot of their games coming up, as long as they get both their receivers back. Denver, Surtain equals defense. That's what we've seen, because once Surtain went out, the Chargers kind of lit up the Bronco defense. I like some of the defensive guys, Denver, but they don't have that main horse in terms of PS2, and when they don't have that console, it's not great. I don't think he plays tomorrow night in New Orleans with a concussion in the short week, but I don't think it's going to hurt them as much because of the Saints injuries I just explained. Philadelphia, high-end talent, which, to be honest, I think is the reason why Sirianni still has his job. He's not because it's a great play caller. He's not really there with the defense. He's not a great play caller on offense. He's just arrogant. And when he gets humbled, he gets quiet, and that's probably for the best for the Eagles that he is. Now, Saquon Barkley, for once, didn't have that big of a game, but it was A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith that did the damage. This is after Dallas Goedert got hurt in this game, unfortunately. But it was the two receivers that came back and asserted themselves accordingly. Those were two really good passes by Jalen Hurts to cook the Browns downfield, and that's saying something considering Cleveland's secondary is excellent. And they were able to survive a Myles Garrett block as he took one back to the crib. Well, Rodney McLeod did that. And they were able to survive an advance and another ugly win against Cleveland. They've got some scores to settle coming up in this season, the Eagles do. One of which coming this week. I'll talk about it. It's not with Dallas. That comes later. For the Cowboys, bad birthday present. Have you had one of those? Have you had a really terrible birthday where it's Murphy's Law, nothing goes right? Either like somebody did something really wrong to you, or the present that you had got shattered on the way in, or have you had one of those bad types of birthday presents or birthdays? This is what happened to Jerry Jones. His 82nd birthday was last Sunday. He watched the Cowboys play the Lions. Okay, Detroit's a really good team. The Cowboys at home. National TV audience. Tom Brady might as well have an apartment in Dallas because he's been there so many times this season. And this was a mauling. Basically, a cowboy was thrown into a lion's den. The lions were hungry. They feasted. And they ate everything, even the bones. It was a very, very unfortunate scene to be a Dallas Cowboy fan, owner, employee, etc. This is the third time in a span of 10 months that the Cowboys have given up a 40-piece at home. That includes, obviously, the playoff game. And the Ravens could have done it had they kept their feet on the gas. It's not looking great for the Cowboys, and it's not looking great for Mike McCarthy. Will Dallas be players in the trade market? They might have to be to save themselves. Let's get to the New York Knicks playoff tier. Seattle, lost road game. Did you see the visuals at Lumen Field on Sunday? There were a lot of Niner fans that showed up. There was a lot of red in that building, and you could hear it too. And the Niners dominated a lot of this game. Seattle made their run, yes, but it felt like the Niners were going to win this game, and the Niners were going to dominate in this game. After the Geno Smith the domination resumed, then San Francisco finished the job accordingly. That's rather unfortunate to see that. It is, because Seattle really needed that win badly to kind of get that Niner monkey off their back and to kind of sort of save their season too, because the season has not hit the same after the 3-0 start. Indianapolis, an ugly win. You did get your Will Levis meme game, and Will Levis's meme is basically rolling into a sideline official like a bowling ball. Rather unfortunate that he effectively took out his legs. That was not good. He also got a gift by Julian Blackmon at the end of the game that took away Tennessee's final shot to win the game. Even still, the Colts kind of sort of struggling to beat the Titans, knowing that Will Levis was playing the entire time, is not great optically. Joe Flacco looked pretty good, and he got that nice touchdown to Michael Pittman, but it's not a great scene. It was just really, really unfortunate to see the Colts struggle that hard, and they found a way to win, but it just doesn't look good optically. But ugly wins are better than pretty losses. You take those. Chicago, Caleb is cooking. Now, sure, the Bears' best performances this year have all come against bad teams. Well, maybe not the Titans game, but we chalked that for the defense. But Caleb is getting better, and it's something that we did need to see regardless of opponent, regardless of circumstance. And Caleb played really well, especially in the second half of this game. this will be needed because the Chicago Bears' difficulties on the schedule is gone from rookie to all-pro in the span of a couple weeks, but it's going to be necessary for Caleb to keep this momentum going. You don't have a choice. If the Bears are going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to beat good teams. They're going to face a lot of them going forward. Not this week, though. LA Chargers. Name tags needed. Who were those guys? Who were a lot of those dudes? Not named J.K. Dobbins and maybe Quentin Johnston, who got hurt. Ladd McConkey didn't even play. Like, who were those dudes that were cooking up the Broncos? Whoever they were impressive. And it was a really good job by the Chargers to cool down a Bo Nix-led Broncos offense that was kind of sort of starting to get their feet under them. Good work by LA to get this road win. And for the better part, actually looked a little bit like the Chargers that were in the first 2 weeks of the season. San Francisco didn't choke. Progress was made because the Niners losing those games like they did to the Cardinals and Rams were really bad. And obviously the division part is also a horrible look. But the fact that they were able to get this one on the road in Seattle, that's a great look considering what's coming up in front of them over the next 2 weeks. 2 vital games that the Niners are probably going to need to have to keep up in an NFC that's got a lot of depth. Pittsburgh, good home win. Just like the Niners, whose fans traveled to Seattle well, Pittsburgh's fans traveled to Vegas once again really well. There were a lot of terrible towels in Vegas. Yo. Anyway, the Steelers were able to maul the Raiders and dominate them with relative ease. Najee Harris was bulldozing people. The defense was doing what it does. TJ Watt remains in God mode. It was a really good week for the Steelers, and yet they're possibly going to Russell Wilson? I don't love this. I honestly don't love it. Yes, Justin Fields can be better. Well, I don't know if Justin Fields can be better. That may not be the thing to say here. Justin Fields has not crashed the car most weeks. Yeah, that's about right. But he hasn't been spectacular. So what happens with Russell Wilson? If Russell Wilson's like that, then okay, maybe you roll with him. But do you really have to do it right now? Washington, no shame, but things didn't go perfectly for the Commanders. Yes, they were bulldozed early by Zay Flowers and bulldozed late by Derrick Henry. Well, throughout the game, really, by Derrick Henry. But the loss of Jonathan Allen's going to hurt. This is a team that's not very good on defense, and now you're talking that they're going to miss their best defensive player. That is, or second best, depending on how you think of Deron Payne. It's a terrible situation to be in for Washington, who relies so heavily on their offense. They're going to have to continue to do so going forward. At least they've got a bye week in the form of the Panthers coming up, but after that, things will pick up quite a bit. And Tampa Bay could have been better. Imagine scoring 50 points and you could have been better. That's what happened with Tampa Bay. They put up a 50-piece, had a disastrous second quarter where they were trailing at halftime despite a 17-0 lead against a backup quarterback in Spencer Rattler. They made Rattler look predictably like a rookie. Good look there. But it's just the 3-0s in the second quarter. Now, some of them weren't Baker's fault, but the 3-0s in the quarter, there was plenty of mistakes on defense in said quarter. The Shaheed return for a touchdown didn't help either. But they could have hung 60 or 70 had they not made those mistakes and had a disastrous second quarter. Yikes. That's probably more so bad for the Saints than it is good for the Bucs when you think about it. Although Baker was dotting people. That was also there. And the Boston Celtics title tier. They didn't win Title 18. They're now even with the Lakers. It sickens everyone else outside of the New England states that the Celtics have a title and have ended the so-called Boston title drought. Yeah, it was a bad June and July for a lot of people. Anyway, Atlanta, angry tag team. Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson are maybe the most physical duo of running backs in the NFL. They have trucked a lot of people. The both of them are capable of doing it. Obviously, Bijan's the more shifty back, and Algier is the more a bit of a bruiser. But both parties can get busy taking souls and trucking people. The latter got an angry run scepter and ended up taking the soul to the Shadow Realm upon doing it, and taking people 15 yards down the field upon doing it. Great work on his part. Atlanta did what they needed to do. They didn't make too many mistakes, and they handled business, and they got out of Carolina with the dub. Kept it moving because the Bucks are not going to stop. There is a rematch coming in Tampa Bay, and I'm looking forward to it between Atlanta and Tampa. Buffalo, win and trade. A lot of penalties, a lot of mistakes. A Buffalo kicker missing a kick wide right, just like the days of old or January. And yet the Bills escaped. It didn't look pretty, but it looks like a win, and Buffalo should take it and run. Or fly, I guess, back home. But the bigger win may be what happened yesterday with the Amari Cooper trade, and the fact that now he can be the number one receiver that Josh Allen could certainly use and help his cause when it comes to getting the ball where it needs to be. I think that's a good look for the Bills. To only give up a third-round pick, it's totally worth the price, and considering his money is relatively cheap, I think it's a really good look for Buffalo to do that. Terrion Johnson with a great inno to take advantage of Mike Williams falling down on the biggest play of the game, to be honest. Good win for the Bills on Monday and on Tuesday. Baltimore, back on track. After an 0-2 start that had the sky falling, because everybody was like, okay, you lose to Kansas City, cool, fine. You blow the Raider game, ooh, that's not good at all. Since that point, the Ravens have been getting back to business. They took care of Dallas. They mauled Buffalo. They've got another statement win against the Commanders here. Obviously, they beat the Bengals in an incredible game, but they got the statement win here against Washington, where for a lot of the game, Baltimore dominated, and at no point in this game did it look like they were going to actually lose it. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are as nasty as advertised when it comes to running the ball. They are lethal, and they are really making life easier for Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews even caught a touchdown. That's how crazy this was. Baltimore is getting back to business, and that's terrifying for everybody else. Green Bay, Jordan Lovely performance. That's what that was. Jordan Love was dotting people. Romeo Doubs was back and he was cooking. Christian Watson was back and he was cooking. Jalen Reed continues to get it where he fits in, and he feels like their best receiver so far this year. He was cooking. They look like a really nasty unit as long as Love is there and as long as they're able to get the ball to where they need to. And the defense is getting healthier. Jair Alexander and company are getting healthier, and that's a really good sign as well. There was no Xavier McKinney this week, but he did have a fumble recovery, so that's technically 6 turnovers in 6 games. I'll allow it. Houston, Mixon returns, and they straight mixed the Patriots because of it. Joe Mixon's presence was felt in this game, and he did his thing. Even in garbage time, Dameon Pierce's presence was felt, and he did his thing. Good look there. CJ Stroud didn't have to be Superman here, and he doesn't when the running game is that good. Tank Dell did his part, Stephon Diggs did his part. Good team effort, good team win by the Texans, and they kept it moving. They did what they were supposed to do. There was an NO or two in there, but they did what they were supposed to do. No real worries about Houston. Detroit, that was personal. There's no other way to think about that. Like, Dan Campbell circled this date on the calendar the second the schedule came out. He's like, yeah, we're going to get this receipt, and we're going to pay them back with interest. They paid Dallas back with interest. It was a merciless beatdown, pretty much from the word go. It was just a disaster class for the Cowboys, and Detroit to the point of just toying with them and trolling them. The disrespect is something that needs to be studied. It was incredibly hilarious to see that. What's not funny is Aiden Hutchinson, and what's not funny is what happened to him. That's a devastating injury for a guy who absolutely was on the medal stand for Defensive Player of the Year. There were 3 guys that were worthy of this. He, TJ Watt, Fred Warner. They look like Defensive Players of the Year. And now it's a 2-man race because Hutchinson won't be able to run it. It's a shame. It really is. Minnesota, showdown approaches. I will talk about that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. But when it comes to the Vikings, nothing really new to say here as long as they get healthy. They did trade for Cam Akers back, but now they're going to have to see if they can get Aaron Jones healthy. And in general, as long as Minnesota's got their guys, they're going to be a good fight for a lot of people. And Kansas City, Super Bowl rematch. And another game I'm going to talk about, so you already know what my title tier games are going to be. The Chiefs are going to be facing the Niners again. There's not much else to say here either because Kansas City, like Minnesota, undefeated and on a bye week. The only real newsworthy things that happened with the Chiefs was that Pat Mahomes was at a couple of Royals-Yankees games, and Taylor Swift, Kelsey, and Mahomes also were at the Yankees game, one a couple nights ago. But other than that, no real news out of Kansas City. Just peace and quiet. And now let's get to the games of interest. Patriots and Jaguars feels like a point of no return game for Jacksonville. New England's got no pressure here. They've got nothing to lose. They've got their quarterback in Drake May, who looked pretty good. I don't like his chances of not getting pummeled by Josh Hines-Allen and Trevon Walker, but they looked somewhat good when it came to having May, and this is without Ramondre Stevenson. Can Stevenson return for this game? If he can, then their chances of beating Jacksonville is all the better. And if for some reason they did beat the Jags, does Doug Peterson get left in London? That's something I need to see. And the Battle of Ohio. There's good news and bad news for the Bengals. The good news is that, yeah, they're a lot better than the Browns because a lot of teams are better than Cleveland. The bad news is they almost never beat Cleveland when they're both trying to play everybody. Now, yes, last year, and I did this game for the Bengals broadcast, they did beat Cleveland. However, the Browns rested everybody, so do we really count that? When Burrow sees Myles Garrett, usually Myles Garrett is standing over top of Joe Burrow. Sacks are happening, bad plays for the Bengals are happening. It is almost always a terrible performance by Joe Burrow and company, and Cleveland gets the dubs. But can they even get the dub here, where Deshaun Watson is really bad and everyone wants to see him not be the starter anymore, where Joe Burrow and the Bengals are starting to kind of get their feet under them and their defense actually looks respectable? Can they possibly get the win here? If the answer is still no for Cincinnati, it's sound all the alarms time. Now to the Monkey's Paw games. Eagles and Giants. So the Eagles have a receipt to pay back the Giants after the humiliation that was the last time we saw these two teams play each other at MetLife. The Eagles played everybody and got dominated in said game. Now, the Giants' defensive line versus the Eagles' offensive line is something I am looking forward to seeing. I am looking forward to seeing how that goes, how that works. Can Brian Burns get by Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata? Same question with Azeez Ojulari. And can Dexter Lawrence get through a really good interior line as well? Meanwhile, the opposite is also true. What happens when you have a terrible defensive line when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback and a terrible offensive line when it comes to protecting said quarterback? That is going to be the interesting part of this Eagles-Giants game to me. Oh, and Saquon returning to MetLife and siding with the ops, Giants-wise. That's another thing worth paying attention to. They're going to boo that man relentlessly. It's going to be wild. Let's get the Dolphins-Colts now, in a game that's incredibly vital to both teams. For tiebreaker purposes, for playoff positioning, how healthy will the Colts be? We obviously know Miami won't have their starting quarterback in Tua. But will the Colts have theirs? The word is that Anthony Richardson's going to be healthy. Is that a good thing, though? Because they've been stable without him. Anthony Richardson is as feast or famine as it gets. The beautiful throws that he makes, he'll make like 3 or 4 a game, are spectacular to look at. He'll also have a lot of bad throws and make a lot of bad mistakes. Which Richardson are we going to see? That's something worth paying attention to. The other part is this. The Colts defense has been bad this year. Miami can run the ball and have shown themselves to be able to run the football. Can the Dolphins run it down Indy's throats and keep this game relatively short? If so, Miami's got a real shot to win this game. As for the playoff tier games, all of the storylines are going to be in Pittsburgh as they're there for the second time in 3 weeks. It's Jets and Steelers. And when it comes to this game, I do wonder about this. Okay, will Russell Wilson start? Will he not play? What happens with Justin Fields? Meanwhile, Devontae Adams probably does play for the Jets. And the question will be simple. Can the Jets offensive line hold up against TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and company? Aaron Rodgers has looked less and less mobile as the seasons have gone on, to be honest. When it's not a quick 3 or 5 step drop, he's in deep, deep trouble. And they're going to have to double team Watt pretty much every play, because if they don't, Watt's going to feast and he's going to add to his Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. with every play in this game. And then the Steelers have shown themselves to be able to run the ball, obviously. Can Justin Fields take pressure off of Najee Harris in this particular game? George Pickens versus Sauce Gardner is something I'm looking forward to seeing as well. That's going to be a pretty fun matchup. In a game where both teams got to have it, can the Jets get it and save themselves, or will the Steelers get it and keep up with the AFC North? And then the next night, we got Ravens and Bucks. I would argue that the hottest offense in the NFL since week 3 is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was terrible against the Broncos in said week, but then after that, the Bucks have cooked. Baker has dominated, and Bucky Irving has been as I thought he could be. He looks like he should be RB1, and he looks dynamic and has brought a legitimate home run threat to the Tampa Bay backfield. But then there's the Ravens, whose defense isn't great, but their offense can also get busy, and it's also been great since week 3. We've seen Lamar and Henry, as I talked about, and Zay Flowers get busy. Like, the Ravens offense has been almost as nasty as Tampa Bay's has been. Looking forward to this game. Can either defense make enough stops to make it happen and get this signature win, as both divisions are looking on very, very carefully, especially Atlanta in the NFC South. They're going to need to see if Tampa Bay is going to catch an L real quick to a really good Raven team. And now let's get to the obvious main events. The NFC North battle, basically the division of doom. Who's going to run it after this week? It's Vikings, it's Lions. Minnesota's already beaten Green Bay, and obviously has beaten everybody else in front of them. Meanwhile, we see Detroit just maul the Cowboys and keeps things pushing when it comes to their game and their style of play, when it comes to their physicality. When they are able to be physical, everybody's in trouble because nobody can outdo it like the Lions. But my concern is easy. Who generates the pass rush for the Lions without Hutchinson? Who can get home and cause disruption there? Who can stop the run there for Detroit whenever Minnesota opts to do so? Aaron Jones, does he play in this game? If he doesn't, can Cam Akers, can the offensive line and Cam Akers and company do their thing and running the football? A vital game approaches here. Plus, the Vikings receiving core versus Detroit secondary concerns me Lions-wise. Big game coming up in Detroit. And of course, the Super Bowl rematch, the Chiefs and the Niners. No, it's not necessarily a revenge game. If the Niners win just like the Eagles did last year, I would consider it like, okay, it's good, it's a good win to have, but it's not end-all be-all, I would say. But for the Niners, they gotta know they can beat the Chiefs. They've played them 3 times in the Kyle Shanahan era. The first time was Super Bowl 54. They had a 10-point lead, and it went very badly. They played in Christian McCaffrey's first game in San Francisco, and Kansas City mauled them from the word go. And then obviously the Super Bowl, where the Chiefs were in trouble, down 2 scores once again, and then Pat Mahomes said, this is going to go the way I planned it to be. The Niners have to show that they can beat Kansas City. Otherwise, it would make me picking them to beat them in the Super Bowl coming up in February in New Orleans probably not as fruitful of a pick of me picking the Chiefs to beat the Niners last year in the Super Bowl in Vegas. Can the Niners get this deal done? If not, it's going to be hard to pick Kansas City to lose outside of the Bills game. So I got to do a bonus game entitled here because these 2 teams are also in it. It's the Packers and the Texans because, let's face it, this game was too good to pass up. CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, these 2 guys have played really well for a lot of this year when they've played, and this is with some injury issues on both parties and the suspension issue with Romeo Doubs. But they're going to be playing in Lambeau on Sunday, and it's a monster game for both teams as Green Bay's got to keep up in the division of doom, and Houston, as they continue to stack wins, just puts more distance between themselves and the AFC South, which is, if the Colts don't win on Sunday, I'm not sure anyone's catching Houston, to be honest, in that division. Houston might be able to rack up wins and get to 13 of them and have a bye and have the 1 seed. That's very well in play for the Texans. For the Packers, it's simple. The division of doom continues to win. You got to keep doing it, Green Bay. Which quarterback outdoes the other? Can either defense stand up to the said quarterback in question? Can the Packer pass rush do anything to offset the Texan version of it? This is a really fun 1 o'clock game that I'm looking forward to seeing in some way and paying attention to. And with that, there are 15 games to pick, and obviously that will be one of them that I will look at very closely. The Bears and the Cowboys are waiting for me at the station, as this is the final stop of this train of thought. Picks coming tomorrow on the Sports Lounge page. Check that out there. There'll be links provided. As for the Railway recap next week, the question will be simple. Can I possibly outdo myself in going 12-2? Denver, New Orleans, you're going to be the first pick and first stop of my next train of thought.